Lesson 41, Algebra Half. Even though it's a short week and we're probably excited about getting away on break, let's not forsake this lesson and not give it the time it needs, as Lesson 41, overall average, was one of the hardest lessons in the book last year, not because of the calculation, but because the concept wasn't always understood and how to compute what an overall average is versus like an average of two averages. How those were different, that became an issue. Kind of like when we're missing a number in averages and we have to find the last number. That's usually a question that a lot of people ask. Averages can be tricky to understand when they're not just basic average problems. So let's make sure we followed. Let's make sure we have this video bookmarked and ready if we ever need to go back to it. And we're on page 136 and 137. I will use their examples. Suppose we have 10 numbers. And the first three numbers, quite simple, are 3, 4, and 5. Okay, what's the average of this first set of numbers? 3 plus 4 plus 5 is, 12. And we divide that by 3 because there's 3 total numbers. That first average, or let's call it average 1, is 4. 12 divided by 4. Let's say the last 7 numbers are 7, 8, 8, 8, 8. Let's do a few more 8s. That's what? 4, 6. We don't want that one, right? And 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total numbers, 5 of which are 8, 2 of which are 7 and 9. What's the average of those? Well, you add all these up, it's going to be 56. How many total numbers was it? 7. So average 2 is 56 divided by 7. That's 8. Okay? If I just took the two averages now, and I did 4 plus 8 divided by 2, right? Because I have 2 numbers left. I'm going to get 12 divided by 2 is 6. My average is 6. That's the average of averages, the average between one average and another. But if I actually found the average of these 7 numbers and these 3 numbers, I added all of them up and divided by 10, it would come out to 6.8. Are you comprehending what I'm doing differently there? I can take one set of numbers and add them and divide them and find an average. And I can take the other set and then combine the averages. That might not come out to the true average. See, the overall average is the true average of all 10 numbers and really the number we want. The overall average is computed based on page 136, the very bottom, where they add all of them and find one average, 68 divided by 10. Instead of 6, we find 6.8, which can be significant depending on what we're working with. So we don't want to make that mistake. Let's go over this again. Overall average, when it asks for that, the true average of all the numbers will be somewhere between the average of the first and the second. In this case, somewhere between 4 and 8. But it might not be the average of 4 and 8 is 6. It might be, rarely will be, different. It won't be the average of averages in most cases. It can be, but it won't be exactly in most cases. So let's try this once. We've got the average of the first 2 numbers was 6. The average of the next 8 numbers was 20. What was the overall average of the 10 numbers? There's 10 numbers, right? Because I have 8 numbers and 2 numbers. Do you know what the quick, lazy, and ultimately incorrect way to solve this problem would be? I'll show it in green. What do you think? First average was 6. Second average was 20. What do I do with those two averages? I find the average of averages and divide by 2, coming out to 13. That's not going to be what we want. Instead, how do we solve? Well, in this case, we don't know what all the numbers were, like in the first example. We can't just add them all up and divide by 10, but we can still solve. Think about that. The average of the first 2 numbers was 6. That means to have found that, we would have had to multiply 2 numbers times 6 divided by however many there were, 2, I guess. That's how we would have found that. And then to find the average of the last one, we would have had to multiply 8 numbers times 20. And all of this would have been divided by 2, this would have been divided by 8, so overall we want to divide by 10. This is actually going to give us the right average. We compute the overall average the same way we compute any average. The average is always the sum of the numbers divided by the number of numbers. Number of numbers, easy. I get that from 2 and 8, 10 total numbers that we're finding an overall average. And then we're finding the sums of the two sets. The average of the first two numbers was 6, so their sum was 2 times 6, or 12. And the average of the next 8 numbers was 20. So to find that, I go 8 times 20, and that's 160. These two products get added, so you're going to have to show at least this step and then one more. 172 divided by 10. Simple math, because 10 just means you put a decimal one spot to the left. Our actual overall average should be 17.2. And if you're not comprehending why 2 times 6 plus the product 8 times 20, at least you can see a pattern forming, right? When you're given a problem like this one, take the first number of numbers times its average and add that product, okay, not multiply, to another product. And that's the same thing, but with the next set. Divide it by the overall sum of 10 or whatever that sum is, and that gives you the overall average. So in practice A, you have the average price of the first 4 items was $40. How many items? 4. What was their average? 40. I'm already envisioning this. That's going to be added to what product? 6 times 80, if you're following me, because it says the average of the next 6 items was $80. What's the overall average price? You'll add these together and divide by the total number of numbers. Hint, hint. Okay? Give me the work. Don't just let that be your work. And give me your final answer. It is a whole number dollars. Get that label. Good luck.